So there's this guy in Russia who considers himself a philosopher. He's a legend in his own mind, but nobody who ever went to school appreciates what he has to say. So he travels through the countryside lecturing to villagers. They don't understand what he's saying, they fall asleep, but what can a man do? He's got to deliver his talks. So he goes from place to place. Nobody ever hears him, nobody ever talks to him. One time he's delivering his lecture, and he notices that one person in the audience is looking at him very intently. And at one point in the speech, this man is making with his head. Finally, somebody appreciates me. But then at another point in the speech, the guy's going like this. So he thinks, oh, he doesn't agree with me. So he brought more proofs and strengthens his argument. And after a while, the guy is going like this. This goes on for an hour. Finally, he finishes his speech and he runs over to the guy, all excited, and he says, "No. So in the end, do you agree with me or not?" The man said, "I'm a farmer. I raise goats. I didn't understand a word you were saying. But 2 weeks ago, my best goat disappeared, went lost. And from a certain angle, you looked like my goat." And I thought, yeah. But then you turned sideways. No. And in the end, he says, I decided, for those of you who speak Yiddish, I decided, a Bock bist du, aber nicht meiner. You are a goat, but not mine. To speak in front of a group of Jews of any size is a responsibility, a serious responsibility. To speak in front of a group of so many Jews who came to hear something is an awesome responsibility. And if I don't live up to it, then I become just a goat. I'll try not to be a goat. We're talking about something very fundamental, earthy, universal. We're talking about human relationships, intimacy, sexuality. And we are inundated by all sorts of misinformation on the subject. Nothing gets as much exposure, pardon the expression, actually, when we published the book, doesn't anyone blush anymore? The publisher, on the day that it was finally published, he said, okay, now we got that taken care of, now we got to get some exposure. So, oh, I'm sorry, wrong word. We're talking modesty, not exposure. But let's understand what all of this means according to Torah. Because Torah is our wisdom in all things. Torah is the blueprint by which the Creator fashioned this world. Anything we need to know that is of any consequence, we'll find in the Torah. And there we will find the truest version, the most correct, the most noble. So let's start off with one basic assumption. Human relationships are meant to ennoble, not to reduce the human being. All the rules of modesty, all the rules of family purity, all the rules of engagement are there to make you stronger, not weaker, to enhance your life, not restrict it. So let's see what conventional wisdom says about this subject and what the Torah says. You'll be amazed. Fundamental question. What is the attraction of male, female, female, male? What is that? What is this obsession we have with each other, with the opposite sex? Which of us is the opposite sex? But that's a different question. What is this fascination? Now, if you ask Freud, at least that's what they say in Freud's name, if you ask Freud, he will tell you that the most earthy, the most urgent, the most basic urge in a human being is the attraction of male to female, which is the libido, which is a sexual attraction. That answer is completely false, wrong. It's not a correct answer. It doesn't even respond to the question. The question is, what is the attraction of male to female? Sexuality does not depend on male and female. There are other forms of sexuality. So sexuality is kind of genderless. The question was, what's the fascination of male and female? The answer can't be sexuality. It's just not. It's not correct. What does the Torah say? Take a look in Bereshis right at the beginning of the Torah. Everything you need to know is right there in the first chapter. The Torah says as follows. God created light on the first day and the heavens on the second day and so on. On the sixth day, God created a human being. He created an Adam, a perfect, complete human being, a masterpiece. This creature was male and female. Then the Torah says God separated the male from the female or the female from the male, and they became two people. Immediately after doing this, God says to them, get married and become one. They must have wondered, we were just one. You separated us. Now you tell us to become one through marriage? Why not just leave us the way we were? Can't be more one than we were. But what we learn from this, a human being in a healthy, complete, natural condition is male and female. A being that is only male, a being that is only female, is not a complete Adam. And so God tells them, you have to become one again. And you can do this through marriage. What then is the attraction, the fascination, the obsession of men with women and women with men? It is the need to be whole, to be complete. It's the need to become one, because male without female is not complete, and female without male is not complete. So it is not a sexual attraction, it is not the pursuit of pleasure, it is the pursuit of oneness, wholeness, and naturalness. This is a very dramatic departure from what we've been raised to think. The distinction between male and female, the separation of male and female, we are told is so vast that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. The Torah says that only looks that way. The truth is, the separation is artificial. You should not be separate beings at all. You should be one. Why? Because that's how you were created in the first place. So our truest nature is to be male and female. The fact that we're only male and only female, that's not natural. So getting married, which seems to be a very unnatural thing to do, because how does Mars and Venus get along? You have to write a whole book on it to explain how that can possibly work. The truth is, it is so much more natural to be married, to be male and female, to be one, than it is to be separate. So we have been misled. We have the assumption that getting married is a great sacrifice, that you have to compromise, that you have to give up, you have to give in. We got to think of it from a Torah perspective. The obsession of male and female is that we are naturally one. We don't feel complete, we don't feel natural when we're not one, when we're separate, and that's why we get married. I like that famous joke. Before you're married, you're not complete. You get married, then you're finished. Now, this attraction of male to female has one thing in common, both for the man and the woman. We're both feeling incomplete, and we both have a need to become one, to become whole. Yet, men are from Mars, and women are from Venus, so that when we try to get together and become one again, we have to get there through two approaches rather than one. The man has to become one through a masculine style. The woman has to become one through a feminine style. What is masculine and what is feminine? Again, such a fundamental question, a simple fact of life, and we're confused about it. By the way, did you notice that in the 60s, we were promised all sorts of wonderful things? If marriages were more voluntary, if nobody pushed you into marriage, if your mother didn't drive you to marriage, and you married only when you were ready, and you married only out of love, and only a person who... marriages will be so much better. That's what they promised. If we have children only when we feel up to it, if we have children only when we're ready and we can afford it, then children will be raised in a much healthier atmosphere, and children will be healthier, and children will be happier. They promised that. If we relaxed the rules and we allowed people to date at a younger age, they would get to know the opposite sex better, then they would choose their mates more wisely. Marriages will be better, family will be better. We were promised all sorts of stuff, none of which has come true. So again, we need Torah wisdom in these crucial areas. So if you ask the average person in the street, what is male and what is female, we're totally confused. We have no idea. What is a real masculine male? And what is a truly feminine woman? Not only don't we know, we're actually being told, at least in universities, that we should overlook the distinctions and try to find the commonality. Men and women are really the same. We're really not different at all. There's really no such thing as masculine. There's really no such thing as feminine. I don't know if you heard this latest fad. At universities, when you register, when you have to fill out papers, they actually have male, female, other. Because it's not right to force people into a fixed identity. We need more freedom. So now there's an alternative. You don't have to be male or female. You can be neither or both or something else. Freedom. You don't even have to be real. You can be a virtual person. So we're totally confused on the subject. What does the Torah say about male and female? Interesting thing. After Adam and Chava are expelled from Gan Eden, from the Garden of Eden, they're cursed. What was the curse? And that's in quotation marks. What was the curse given to Adam? By the sweat of your brow will you make bread. Which means you're going to have to plow and take care of your fields. You're going to have to work hard to make a living. What was the curse to Chava? That she will bear children in pain and that she will hunger for her husband. El ishech chukosech. You will long or hunger for your husband, which kind of implies a dependency or a neediness. Medrash makes a fascinating statement. Medrash says, God is good at everything except cursing. He's all-powerful and almighty, but he's not good at cursing. Because every time he curses, it turns into a blessing. For example, God curses Chava that she is going to long for a husband. And what is the result? Men find out that women yearn for them, so every man runs around like crazy trying to find a wife. So instead of women being needy, it turns out the men are needy because they're finding it irresistible. To have someone long for you, that's irresistible. So they run around looking for a wife. What does all this tell us? It tells us what a man is and what a woman is. A man is a giver, a provider, which means a male gets his final and ultimate satisfaction and contentment from the pleasure of giving. And that's why when he's cursed, the curse is, it's not going to be easy to give. If you want to feed your family, you're going to have to work hard. So yes, you're the giver, but it's not going to come easy, which is actually a blessing. Chava, the woman, is the receiver. She is receptive. She receives what is given. When you're a receiver and you're waiting to receive, how do we describe that condition? You hunger. You yearn. A giver doesn't hunger. He goes out and does what he needs to do. A receiver, until she receives, hungers. In marriage, there is no give and take. That's a terrible expression. There is no taking when you have two human beings. Taking is abuse. You don't take a person. You don't take from a person. In a marriage, there's a giving and a receiving. Even under the chuppah, the groom gives a ring and the bride receives it. She doesn't take it. She accepts it. She receives it. That creates oneness. When you have a giving and a receiving, the result is the two become one. If you have two givers, they're not going to become one. If you have two receivers, they're not going to become one. And here's one of the problems in marriages today. There is no glamour in being a husband, and there's no glamour in being a wife. Husbands and wives are the butts of all the jokes. So when people get married today, the guy has every intention of remaining a man, and the woman has every intention of remaining a woman. They don't become husband and wife. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but men and women don't get along. We try very hard to fix it. It's not working. I had this couple say, we're dating, we're going out, we're spending a lot of time together, and it's not easy, so we're going for therapy. Wait a minute, I don't get it. You don't like each other, and you're going for therapy? How can you never hear two guys, best friends from high school? They're not getting along. They got into an argument. They see things differently. I've never heard two guys say, we're not getting along so good, so we're going for therapy. They don't go for therapy. They say, it's been nice knowing you. Bye. What's with the therapy? Men and women don't get along. We've been trying very hard since the turn of the century, 20th century. For over 100 years, we've been trying every kind of combination. Date more, date younger, date many, date over. It's not working. Men are better off. A man is better off without a woman in his life. A woman is much better off without a man in her life. In fact, when you see a man and a woman who do get along, they need therapy. Something's not right. Either he's not, something's wrong. When a man and a woman don't get along, what a relief. They're normal. And that's why God invented marriage. In marriage, he becomes a husband, she becomes a wife. Now, men and women are better off without each other. Husbands and wives can't exist without each other. A husband is not better off without a wife. A wife is not better off without a husband. Unfortunately, because of the popular myths, there's no glamour in being a wife, so women remain women, even when they're married. Men remain men, even when they're married, because there's no glamour in being a wife. So when married women get together with each other to have a night out, what is it called? A girls' night out, not a wives' night out. They're not wives, they're not even women. Now they're just girls. Wives don't have any fun. Wives are desperate. The only way to describe wives. If they're wives, they're desperate. If they're having fun, they must be girls. So we have to go back to being husband and wife. Husband and wife is where the man is truly male and the woman is truly female. Very brief example. Student and teacher. The student is the receiver, the teacher is the giver. What makes an ideal teacher? If you've had an ideal teacher, you know. An ideal teacher is a true giver. He talks his heart out. He shares everything he knows in the best way he knows. Every good teacher will tell you that being a teacher has shortened their life by 5 years because they've talked their heart out. Every good teacher is sensitive to the student's need. He doesn't just walk in and deliver a prepared lesson. He knows what the students need to learn, what their next step is, where the gap is in their information, what they're hungering for. And it's that hunger that makes him a teacher. I was speaking to young students who are frustrated because their teachers are not good teachers. I said, I know. That's what I complained about when I was in school. Things haven't changed. But what is true is that if a student comes to class with a genuine desire to know, it's amazing how good the teacher suddenly becomes. Students make the teacher. So if you come to class and you say, teacher, I really want to know what this Gemara means, you'll be amazed at how good the teacher becomes. Because a real giver is sensitive to the hunger of the receiver and is devoted to producing, giving, providing, bringing what is missing. That's a true giver. A true giver gets his real satisfaction from the pleasure of giving. And that pleasure is to him overwhelming. He surrenders to it completely. He devotes his life to it completely, even if it shortens his life. That's a giver. A receiver is more difficult. It is harder to be a student than to be a teacher. To receive means, as a student, it means you come to a lecture, to a class, and your intention is to soak up whatever is going to be taught. As you're listening, if you're a real student, as you're listening, you have no thoughts in your mind other than absorbing and receiving the teaching. You're not sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I've heard that before. Or, oh, that doesn't sound right. Or, I don't like this idea. I'm not comfortable with it. If you're doing that, then you're a critic, not a student. To be a student means you're there to absorb. That is a true student. After the class is over, then you review. Reviewing means you analyze what you absorbed, how much of it do you agree with, how much don't you agree with, how much is familiar, how much is new. Now you take it apart and analyze what you've received. But you have received something. Whereas if you're doing that while you're learning, while you're being taught, then you're not really receiving. There's another word related to receptive. A woman is receptive. The other word is nurturing. What does it mean to nurture? Every woman, every mother knows this. How does a mother nurture a child? By diapering the child? By nursing? By feeding? Not really. You can hire someone to do all of those activities. A nurturing mother nurtures the child without doing anything. The fact that the child is in the mother's presence, in the mother's environment, that itself nurtures the child. Like a home. When you're home, you feel nurtured. Why? What are they doing for you in the home? Nothing, neglecting you. Criticizing you, telling you to get a haircut. But being there is nurturing. That's the difference between a house and a home. A house doesn't nurture. A home nurtures. And what makes a home a nurturing place? The woman. So what does it mean to be receptive? To be receptive means you accept and receive someone into your world, into your space, and being there helps life unfold. Very much like the uterus, the womb. How does the womb nurture the fetus? Without doing anything, consciously. Being there gives life. It is a place of life. That's called nurturing. So what does it mean to receive? To receive means to envelop, to absorb someone else into your space, and by doing that, you become life-giving. If you have a great amount of space, you can nurture many. A little space, you nurture few. What's harder, to be a teacher or a student? If a teacher talks his heart out, really cares about the student and the subject, And after all his efforts, he finds out that the students really weren't paying attention and didn't take him seriously. He would be devastated. But not nearly as devastated as the receiver, the student, who was completely open, completely receptive, without any reservations, without any defenses, and allowed the lesson to be absorbed into every fiber of their being, and then finds out that the teacher was not sincere, doesn't really care. That devastation is much worse. Because to be a receiver, you have to be more vulnerable than being a giver. This is marriage. The attraction of male to female is the need to become one. Becoming one takes two people, one being male, one being female. Two men can have the greatest friendship in the world and live happily ever after, but it is not a marriage. They don't become one. You have to be male and female to become one. The man becomes one by losing himself, surrendering completely to the pleasure of giving. The woman becomes one by surrendering completely to the pleasure of receiving. When that happens, they both dissolve. They both surrender to the oneness, and then they truly become one being. And even if it only lasts for a moment, it is a magnificent, awesome experience. How do they do it? The separation, we said, is artificial. It's imposed. Something comes between them that makes them separate beings. So how do you become one again? By a process of elimination. Remove all things that separate you, and if there's no thing separating you, then you are by nature one creature. So what can you do to become one? There's nothing you can do. You have to undo the separation. Remove all things that come between you, and the result is oneness. One of the things that comes between people is love. I love you. Well, I love you. You see, right away, it's an argument. And really, when your husband says, I love you, or your wife says, I love you, don't say, I love you. Why are you starting an argument? It's not easy for a man to say, I love you. When he finally gets up the courage to say, I love you, you change the subject? Say, well, enough about you. I love you. He'll never say it again. Don't pick a fight. So when a man says, I love you, he's talking about himself. He's expressing his feeling. Stick to the subject. Don't change it to you. So, for example, if he says, I love you, focus on him. Stay focused on him. Say something like, wow, you have such good taste. But if you say, I love you, it's like, I don't care what you feel. I'm trying to tell you what I feel. Love comes between people. If love becomes the thing, then it is the thing that keeps you separate. Because to be one, you have to eliminate all things. If sexual pleasure is the thing, it's going to ruin the relationship. Because it is a thing, and all things must be removed in order to achieve intimacy. Intimacy means two people, period. Two people and nothing else. Just him and her, he and she. That's all there is. There's a mezuzah on your bedroom door. You know what the word mezuzah means? Zu and ze, which means he and she. That's all that's allowed in a bedroom. A bedroom is a sacred space. It is the womb of the home. And in the womb, there can be no things. So, here's the punchline. If you asked your grandmother or your great-grandmother, what happens in the bedroom behind closed doors between husband and wife? Remember what your grandmother said? She said, nothing. And you thought she was keeping secrets. She was giving you the only correct answer. In a bedroom, there are no things. There is no thing. It's the elimination of all things that creates intimacy. If you can get past all your stuff, if you can get beyond all things that make people separate, then you will become one. And if you can achieve that once a year, it's a blessing. Once a month, you are fabulously wealthy. Every time you're together, you are obscenely rich. That is the miracle of marriage, intimacy, and true sexuality. We've been misled terribly. Society has turned sex into a thing. Things separate people. A couple who have been intimate correctly have achieved that moment of oneness. They come away from that experience feeling more innocent than before. Intimacy makes you more innocent than before. Sex doesn't do that. How you become more innocent? You've experienced yourself above and beyond things. That is your most innocent state. That's like Adam and Chava before they ate from the tree. That's why it is the holiest thing human beings can generate without doing a mitzvah, without a Torah, without a shofar, without a matzah, without a mezuzah, just him and her, and there's something holy there. The Shekhinah is present when there's a he and a she, and nothing. And so the question is never, how was it? That is so vulgar. There is no it. There's just he and she. There's just us. And when we achieve that, then we know what it means to be one, and we know what it means to be sacred. Can you imagine the effect that that would have on the child born from such an intimacy? They'll never want to leave home. That's a problem, right? We'll talk about that some other time. In the meantime, let's focus on intimacy. It is the biggest blessing that God has given us. It is the highest that a human being can elevate himself or herself to without actually doing a mitzvah. Although sometimes it is a mitzvah. The bond that creates is unbreakable. A couple who have had that moment will never separate again. At least not in any meaningful way. So, the laws of modesty between husband and wife are there to protect the delicacy or the delicateness of this awesomely divine holiness. It's not there to restrict. It's not there to prevent. It's there to clear the path to real intimacy. It empowers, it doesn't weaken. Modesty doesn't mean you should be ashamed of yourself. Modesty means you're beyond things. And that's why there is nothing to look at. Because what you see with your eye is always a thing. Eyes can only see things. You can stare at a person for a year and not know who that person is. You know what he is. Tall, short, fat, skinny, but you'll never know the person. So modesty means We're engaged in something that isn't visible. We're trying to achieve something beyond things, and therefore your eyes are not helpful. And so intimacy demands modesty. The modesty demands the elimination of all things. As a people, we have been blessed for thousands of years with this intuitive, perhaps, instinctive, or traditional awareness. Our grandparents didn't talk about this, maybe didn't even think about it, but somehow, intuitively, they were reaching for intimacy in their marriages. Their bedrooms were holy, a holy space, and they produced children that could respond to a Holocaust with a desire for life. Not 50 years later, not 30 years later, the week after the Holocaust, they started a family. They started a business. These are indestructible people. And that comes from being born out of true intimacy. We can have that blessing. We can have that kind of family. We can have that kind of child. It doesn't take anything. It takes the elimination of all things. So if we get beyond things, we get beyond our own sexuality, we get beyond our own loves and hates, we get beyond our pursuits of pleasure, we become each other, we become one. And then we are normal, healthy, true human beings. Make sense? A little bit? Thank you for listening, and we should all be blessed with true intimacy, true oneness, the kind of family that the Jewish people are famous for, have always been famous for, and will continue to be famous for.